Good morning, everybody. Jason Overly here, Overly Equipment LLC on Facebook, www.fordjacobsontractor.com on the interwebs. November 25th, today, cold, rainy day in Western Pennsylvania, and it's Black Friday. So we don't go nowhere on that day. So we're staying home, working in the shop today. What we have, we're working on is an LGT 145. It's all original paint, nice original seat, and oil seals. These are the oil seal on the crank side where the gaskets between the bearing plate and the motor is bad. Leaking oil pretty bad. Runs good. Got that little bit of a puller knock. I don't know if it's going to be the wrist pin or the crank and the rod. We're going to tear the whole engine apart, measure everything, send it out to the machine shop, bring it back, put it back together. But the video is about the different kinds of engines in these machines, and this is our 72 to 76 style. Actually 75 and a half, because in 75 and a half they actually went with a bolt-in engine. But I get phone calls, I get instant messages, emails. Hey, I got a Ford and I can't get the engine apart, it's welded in. Who would have welded the motor in? Well, the motor is not welded in. The sump is welded in. The motor bolts to the sump. So therefore you can unbolt the engine and the sump stays in. So why would they do that? Well, with the casting process, it's also part of the cast. When they're casting things, that's where it holds the front axle onto the pin. So the oil pan, the axle, pivot point, assembly point is all casted into it. So it makes a heck of a strong front end frame, no cracks. You've seen Cub Cadets where the bolt holes will crack the frame because it's only 3/16 inch steel. The motor will crack the holes on a narrow frame in particular. So this makes for a really strong tractor. These tractors are pretty heavy. If you look on their website, you can see the actual, there's a OEM from the dealership, a breakdown of the weight and horsepower and all this stuff, and these tractors weigh around 750 pounds the way you're looking at it, without decks and everything else. So they can be pretty heavy. Now the gear drives are a little bit lighter of a tractor, but anyhow, let's get to this video. We'll start showing you some engines. I want to show you this engine in particular, and then we're going to show you a flange block, which most people are probably more likely to see from the 60s and 70s. That engine was used in more of a variety of different machines versus the narrow block versus a flange block. Okay, here is our narrow block Ford LGT 145. Now that engine is held in by 4 bolts, those 4 bolts, and they go up through, one up here, straight up in, one behind the axle. We can get the camera in here. One behind the axle. Hold on. Up underneath. Front of the axle, back. There's 4. So, unbolt your drive shaft flange, and a little tug, motor comes right off. That's it. Now they can be stubborn. You may want to get some wood blocks across the frame and put a pry bar underneath. Be careful, and just give it a little bit of pry, or you don't want to go beating on that PTO with a hammer, okay? But they'll come right off. It may take a little bit of finesse and work to get them off if they're being on there, because remember, these tractors are 40, 50 years old. So anyhow, that is a narrow block onto the oil pan. We're going to pull this engine, and I'm going to show you underneath. Give me 1 second here, folks. If I can pause the dang camera. Okay. As you all know, I don't make great videos as far as editing and all that stuff. You come here to get information and to learn how to do this stuff. If you want to watch a good video, you may want to go watch Close Encounters of the Third Kind, or maybe Jaws, or Jurassic Park, something by Steven Spielberg. He's a great movie maker. I'm not. I'm here for information. So anyhow, here's your engine out. There's our narrow block. She's out, up on a chain ball. So this is what it looks like outward, and you can see that oil is a little metallic-y. Yeah, like an old paint job from the 70s. So I'm going to assume that we probably got some aluminum filings in there, probably from the rod. So we'll probably have to put a new rod in it, turn the crank down. But that's what your sump looks like. As you can see, it's casted where the axle, and I got it on stand so it won't float, but you can see here's your axle pin and the casting. So it's all one streamlined casting from the foundry at Kohler. Now, Kohler would do this to their oil pans per manufacturer. So this was, say, a Ford Jacobson. If you guys would check out a John Deere, say 200 series, 300 series, whatever, you would see it's a flange block, but they have their own custom casted oil pans in them. Cub Cadet, they had cast iron, they had cast aluminum. So they would make oil pans specific for the manufacturer of the tractor. So anyhow, that's the basis of why every oil pans, they only made two different kinds of engines. Kohler only made two engines, the narrow block and the flange block. That's it. Now, you're saying, oh, Gravely was different. No, Gravely had a different crankshaft on it and different applications, but the blocks were all the same as far as that oil pan. It's either a flange block or an narrow block. That's the only two they made. It was the crank would be different and the oil pan would be different. But that engine would actually, that block would be the same. Now, don't get me wrong, some blocks may not be drilled and tapped on, like, say, let me take a look at this. Like on the PTO end of this, if you look at the PTO end of this tractor, or engine, I'm sorry, these bolts are all, as you can see, are threaded. That's for your electric PTO. Now, these ones aren't. Now, I'm not a Gravely guy. I've never actually had one in the, well, I've had them in the shop, but I've never had them torn apart. And I do believe maybe some of you Gravely guys are knowledgeable with that way more than I am. But I think some of them bolts, them holes, would be bossed with threads in them, and then that would be where the transmission would bolt. I'm not sure. But you got to remember, Kohler built engines for plenty of manufacturers, not just garden tractor and farm tractor manufacturers, but they made pumps, trash pumps, water pumps, hydraulic pumps. So there's a multitude of applications these engines went into. So it was like, Kohler was like, hey, we're going to try to make everything universal. So that's what I'm getting at. They only made two style blocks. Now you'll also see this is a bolt-in oil filler. Now that was different on several engines, even in the LGTs. I think I have one out in the salvage yard where you had your dipstick up here as well. So again, it's different applications for different manufacturers. So the basic block was the same with a little bit of different machining, so to speak. But the basics of the block itself were, there was only two, a narrow block and a flange block on them. Now, there is a difference between them. We'll get to that here in a minute. Hold on one second. You know I'm not good with the camera, so just hang on one second, folks. Okay, so I have a bunch of engines here inside. So if anybody ever needs an engine, my God, let me know. I got 14s, 16s, anyhow, 8s, whatever. Okay, this is a flange block. Starter generator style. You see what I'm saying? How there's a flange that's cast into the block, and it bolts to that big sump. That's a big 2-quart sump. Maybe even 3-quart, maybe 2.5. Not sure. But see how it's a flange? Well, that's the two type of blocks they made. They made that block there, which was in the older, this was in an older Ford 120 angle frame from the 60s. And then they had the engine I just showed you, the narrow block. You can see the difference in the narrow block and the flange block. So this engine, it's a narrow block, but it has an oil pan bolted in, and it's got this bracket. If you guys know these tractors, this is for a closed-sided. This came out of a closed-sided Ford from 1977 to 1983. If it was in a Jacobson, 1977 to 1987. Yes, Jacobsen continued to make the garden tractor past Ford. Ford switched manufacturers to Gilson Brothers in 1984. So anyhow, those are the three types of engines that came in the Jacobsen and Ford. Again, flange block versus narrow block, narrow block, narrow block. There's a flange block, 8 horsepower, and look at this. Hey, I forgot I even had this. There is a 10 horsepower narrow block with a cast aluminum, I don't know if that's a 1 quart or whatever, shallow oil pan for a Cub Cadet narrow frame. So there you go. The oil pans changed, the engines did not, except like I said, the flange. There's only 2 type of engine blocks. So I hope this video helps everybody. Yes, I have a pile of engines. If anybody needs an engine or a core or a block, these are all good engines. Some of them may have smoked or whatever, but the cores are good. Good for rebuilds or whatever. But anyhow, give me a shout out. I don't mind shipping stuff. Problem is, trying to ship an engine, that's expensive. But anyhow, let's get back to a couple other things we want to go over here. Okay, so that pretty much sums up. Sums up our little demonstration of what these engines and how to pull one out of that tube frame. They're not welded in, folks. They're not. Got a lot of calls on that, but anyhow, I hope it helps you. I hope the videos help you. Like I said, I don't edit well. I don't have time to make a correct video. I work a full-time job at a power plant, keeping the lights on for everybody. And then we do this on the side, and I still got a family, 2 kids, dogs, goats, chickens, and a mini farm here to run. So this is why the videos don't come out as often, or are they good? I'll be the first to admit they're not that great. There's a lot of people out there make way better videos than I do. I just try to get to the nuts and bolts of things and try to help people out. The next video we're going to do while we got this engine out is this guy. Everybody see, look at that. I got a half a play of steering, and them wheels ain't even turning. So we're going to go over that too. We're going to do a video of that. Bear with me. We're going to pull the steering column out, rebuild it. And you're thinking, oh man, this is what I need. Yeah, the rest of this tractor comes apart, folks. The fenders come off whole 9 yards. It's a task. I'm not going to lie to you. It's a task to do this. But the tractor's already torn apart. Like I said, we do a video on it, show some people how to do it. We sell all the parts. For the steering column, to rebuild it, we even sell the cam follower pins, which is usually the reason why you get all this play is the cam follower. If the wheels are still turning, like this one is, and it's just got slop, it's your cam follower. But if your whole steering wheel spins around and around, there's a good chance that the plate broke and nobody's remaking them, and you can't weld them. It's a difficult scenario. We may get into machining some pins so people can weld their own, but with the price of steel, the economy, the price of getting things machined, it's just not, I don't want to get political, I don't want to get into the economy. We all know where we're at with this right now in 2022. Everybody's hurting, and I get it, and I feel for the country and around people around the world actually. So I don't want to get into that aspect, but anyhow, I'm hoping to help people here the best I can with this stuff. So if you got any questions or need parts, please give me a shout out. Like again, website is www.fordjacobsentractor.com. Shout out to all the people out there who recommend me for parts and knowledge, especially Norm from iSaveTractors.com. I do appreciate it. Thanks, Norm, for sending some customers my way. I do appreciate it. There's a couple others out there. Don't want mentioning, I get it. But I do appreciate it. We're all in this together, folks. There's no sense of fighting and arguing. We're all in this together. So spread the love and light, folks. Later on.